It's such a hassle with the hospitalization and everything. Let's get a divorce.
When I was diagnosed with breast cancer and feeling down, my husband said unbelievable things to me. He handed me divorce papers and walked out on me. At first, I was shocked by his actions. But gradually, anger welled up inside me. So, just as he wished, I submitted the divorce papers. I don't care even if he regrets it later. A week later, he, looking as white as a sheet, showed up at my door with a wad of cash. Truly adorable. Hey, it's Mommy. It was 6 years ago when I gave birth to our daughter, Nadia, at the age of 27. My husband, George, who was present at the birth, shed tears of joy. We spent our days feeling peaceful happiness, but that happiness didn't last long. Eventually, I realized that George only doted on our daughter when it was convenient for him.
Stop being so noisy. Do something about it.
Looking at Nadia, who wouldn't stop crying, my husband tooted loudly. When I first met him, I was drawn to his easygoing and genuine personality, but he couldn't stand anything disrupting his own pace. Whenever our daughter, who was still a baby at the time, started fussing while he was enjoying things like video games, his mood would instantly sour. Nadia, go over there, okay? I knew his personality. I would often try to move away from him when Nadia was upset, or I would try my best to soothe her, but dealing with a baby isn't always straightforward.
Hey, you're the mother, why can't you keep her quiet?
Despite my efforts, George would completely disregard such moments and blame me. But then, when he was in a good mood,
Nadia, come to Daddy. I'll hold you.
He called Nadia in a silky voice. But Nadia, with a face that looked like she was about to burst into tears, reached out for me instead. It was as if she knew that her father's affection was fickle.
What's wrong with her? Mary, maybe it's your bad parenting.
With those bitter words, George stomped heavily on the floor and stormed out of the room. Because he was like that, as our daughter grew older, she started to watch his face and became hesitant to approach him. I never had raised a child and I felt lost. Although I wanted to talk to my own mother about it, my family lived far away, so I confided my worry to my mother-in-law, who lived nearby, instead. She had gone through a divorce when my husband was still in elementary school and had raised him and his sister by herself, making her a resilient woman who had faced many challenges. Since George and I had been together since college, I had known my mother-in-law since then, and she had always treated me kindly. She still works and even holds a high-ranking position at her company. She worried about me and started visiting our house regularly to check on us, despite her busy schedule. My husband also held his mother in high regard, and he would obediently listen to her words. Besides, having my mother-in-law's support was incredibly reassuring for me. Although I had mixed feelings towards George, I wanted to build a good family for her sake as well. There were times when I couldn't agree with George, and I would voice my opinions. However, I often swallowed my frustrations, knowing that if I just endured, things would eventually settle down, and I continued to live with him. After a year of maternity leave, I returned to work, and my days became truly hectic. Wow, it was really busy today.
You're being dramatic over a little work. You earn less than I do.
Whenever I showed even the slightest sign of fatigue from balancing work, household chores, and childcare, my husband would make a disgusted face.
My mom managed both housework and work just fine. You should learn from her.
My husband said this with a smirk, as if mocking me. He probably meant it as a jab. However, as someone who respected her as a fellow woman, I took his words to heart and used them to motivate myself. As time passed and our daughter turned 5, I began to notice a different change in my husband's behavior. He started coming home late or staying overnight at hotels near his workplace due to his busy schedule. One day, while my husband was in the shower, I went into the laundry room to put away some towels I had washed. That's when I noticed a notification on his phone, which he had left on top of his clothes, and I glanced at it casually. Then, on his phone screen, a WhatsApp message from someone named Jackie popped up. "Can't wait to see you soon." What is this? At that moment, I was convinced that George was cheating on me. Despite having such a husband, the shock was immense because I had believed in him. But at the same time, a surge of anger welled up inside me. What was all this time when I trusted him? Getting divorced crossed my mind, but George was Nadia's only father, and I didn't want to upset my mother-in-law either. For the time being, instead of pursuing infidelity, I took steps within my power to prepare for whatever might come in the future. About a month after discovering my husband's betrayal, I was perplexed by the results of a health checkup I had at work. While the general items showed no abnormalities, the optional breast cancer screening indicated that I needed a detailed examination. Thinking it must be a mistake, I decided to get a re-examination at a specialized hospital just in case. It's okay, it's okay. They'll surely say there's nothing wrong. However, my hopes were shattered when the doctor informed me that I had breast cancer. After receiving a detailed explanation from the attending physician, the shock was so overwhelming that I listened as if it were happening to someone else. Leaving the examination room, I sat on a sofa in the waiting area, unable to move, feeling numb. Thoughts about the future raced through my mind in a whirlwind of emotions.
Mommy.
At that moment, it felt like I heard my daughter Nadia's voice. That's right. I can't leave her behind. I have to stay positive. I snapped out of it and resolved to undergo appropriate treatment, determined to overcome the illness for the sake of my young daughter. Feeling that I needed my husband's cooperation and understanding, I gathered my courage that evening and decided to talk to him about it.
Ha! Cancer? That's serious. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I think treatment will start soon. But...
Oh, okay. I don't want to get all emotional about it. Let me think for a bit.
With that, my husband quickly went to bed without even properly listening to what I had to say. Overwhelmed by anxiety and feeling like I was being crushed, tears welled up in me at George's complete lack of concern or comforting words. For her sake, I won't give up, no matter what. As I looked at my daughter sleeping peacefully in the bedroom, I found strength once again.
I'm busy at work.
The next day, my husband didn't come home. However, the day after that, he returned home after Nadia had gone to bed, seeming strangely cheerful. He proudly waved a piece of paper in front of me.
It's such a hassle with the hospitalization and everything. Let's get a divorce.
What?
Sooner or later, you're going to die anyway. What's the problem with splitting up beforehand? Just put Nadia into some facility or something, okay?
He ranted on unilaterally.
That's that. Take care.
And with that, he left the house, taking only the necessary belongings. At that point, I was beyond anger, just utterly dumbfounded. What? What's with that attitude? Well, whatever, I'll just submit them anyway. Since I became convinced of my husband's infidelity, I had already lost any affection or expectations towards him. So, I decided to go along with George's wishes. I don't care even if he regrets it later. A husband who doesn't bother to listen to others and doesn't care about his wife's well-being. Moreover, he has no regard for our daughter and only thinks about himself. I don't need a partner like that, and I can't possibly forgive him. The next day, I promptly went to the city hall to submit the divorce papers. On my way back, I visited someone. A week later, I received a message from my husband on my phone. I'm sorry. I want to talk. Well, here it comes. I replied to him, come to the house tonight. I arranged for Nadia to stay with my sister-in-law during that time. I didn't want my daughter to see her father in such a pitiful state. That evening, George arrived at our home looking pale, and he was holding something in his hand.
I'm sorry. Please, let's forget about the divorce.
As soon as he entered the house, he began to apologize, his attitude completely different from the other day. What? What are you up to now? I said coldly, and he looked flustered with teary-eyed.
You suddenly dropped the bomb about having cancer, and I got all shaken up and said those things.
He grabbed my arm and shook it back and forth, looking at me from under his brows. I struggled to understand how he could think I would forgive him just like that. I confided in you first, George. I was hurt and sad when you didn't even bother to listen to me and just mentioned divorce. It seemed I hit a nerve as my husband was left speechless, mumbling incoherently.
Anyway, please take this. It's my sincerity. Use it for your treatment.
He handed me a brown envelope that he had been holding tightly in his hand.
There's $2,000 in there. Should be enough, right?
He said with a smug look on his face, rubbing the tip of his nose with his finger. However, I coldly pushed it back towards him. This is nowhere near enough.
I'm trying to do something nice for you, and this is how you react?
My husband yelled at me, his face turning red. At that moment, someone appeared from the next room.
Acting all high and mighty. George, you need to remember your place.
Mother? Why are you here?
With the sudden appearance of my mother-in-law, my husband couldn't hide his surprise, but then he seemed to quickly come up with something, and his face lit up.
Mom, it's awful. I gave her $2,000, and Mary just pushed it back at me.
Of course she did. When I told you to apologize properly to Mary and make things right, that's not what I meant.
My husband clung to his mother for help, but she remained unfazed and responded sharply. In fact, after submitting the divorce papers at the city hall, I visited my mother-in-law's house. There, I told her about George leaving the house unilaterally. It was also at my request that she was waiting in the next room at that moment.
After hearing Mary's story, I contacted this foolish son. I told him to make amends like a real man.
It seemed my husband's idea of making amends was to offer $2,000 and ask for reconciliation. So that's what it was. What a cheap display of sincerity.
Truly, it's embarrassing, even though he's my son.
Wait a minute. Mom, whose side are you on, me or Mary? I'm your son.
My husband tried pathetically to win his mother's support. Then, I decided to play my next card. George, you've been cheating, haven't you? For the past year, you've been coming home late or staying out overnight. I thought something was up.
Ha! I don't know what you're talking about.
Despite his denials, beads of sweat formed on his forehead, clearly showing his agitation.
Is that true?
Since I hadn't yet told my mother-in-law about George's infidelity, she turned on him with a fierce look, demanding answers.
Mom, that's not true. Mary's just misunderstanding.
My husband hastily tried to deflect, but I wouldn't let him get away with it. She's Jackie, right? Look, isn't this her? I confronted him, showing a picture of my husband and a young woman looking friendly together. Of course, I made sure my mother-in-law saw it too. When I became convinced of my husband's infidelity, I searched George's social media and found a woman named Jackie who often commented on his posts. Then, I looked into Jackie's social media and found many photos that seemed to be dates with my husband. Although George's face was hidden, he was wearing his favorite limited edition watch, so it was obvious that was him. Even when his mistress's name was mentioned, my husband was speechless.
Do you know how much I suffered because of your father's infidelity? I've told you countless times and not to do anything that would betray Mary.
My mother-in-law glared at my husband with a face scarier than a demon's.
I just acted on impulse. I'll break up with her right away.
I'm cutting ties with a child like you. As long as I have my granddaughter and Mary, I'm fine.
Mom, please calm down.
George looked even paler than when he arrived at the house. I had hoped that revealing his infidelity to my mother-in-law and having her give him a piece of her mind would be enough, but her declaration of cutting ties was unexpected. My husband often said,
My mom's a company executive, so she's rich. If anything happens, we can rely on her.
and had been counting on my mother-in-law financially.
Mary, I'll break up with the other woman. Please help me reconcile with Mom. I'm begging you.
Don't be ridiculous. When I scolded my husband as he pleaded, he flinched for a moment but then stubbornly clung to my hands.
Please, don't say that.
The divorce papers have already been filed, and my mind is made up. You said that $2,000 was your gesture of sincerity, but you're missing a zero.
Ha!
As I pushed my husband away and said that, he looked bewildered. I'll demand $20,000 in compensation, so make sure to settle properly.
That's impossible.
My husband, finally understanding the situation, looked more pathetic than I had ever seen him before, utterly stunned. Oh, by the way, fortunately, my breast cancer is in the early stage, so with proper treatment, full recovery is expected. When I piled on after that, my husband slumped down right there, completely defeated. Since then, as promised, I demanded $20,000 in compensation and $500 a month in child support from my husband. George apparently got dumped by his affair partner shortly after that and is now living alone in a small apartment. He's been going to my mother-in-law's house repeatedly, pleading for forgiveness, but she has steadfastly refused to accept him back. I've completed my treatment and things are going well. While I was at the hospital, my mother-in-law took care of Nadia, supporting us both mentally and physically. Nadia has grown quite fond of her, and she's full of energy. I want to express my gratitude to my mother-in-law and continue to spend each day with Nadia, filled with smiles.